imagine you and your brother, because you are family and you've worked together for so long, you have your own language between the two of you, and there's a chemistry there that happens with family members who like each other that just doesn't necessarily happen outside of that. But in terms of the collaborators you've worked with over the years, who do you think you've had the most chemistry with that's not Jaime?
Oh, I think it was Darwin, actually. Yeah. I mean, no, I've worked with other people that worked fine, like Peter Bagge. That book was actually difficult for me because it was the first thing I did outside of Love and Rockets. And since you're working at DC, they're more involved in getting the books out. They're scheduled, they got printers, they got colorists, they got all this stuff planned. Whereas indie comics is more like whenever it gets done. That's why you never see indie comics come out on time.
Right.
Whereas DC, they don't enforce it, but they would prefer to see this stuff happen on a good, on a normal basis, And for me, that's great. That's great because it was a learning experience to do. Yeah, it was really hard because I had to pump out all these pages at a certain time, and it was grueling at first, but I liked the discipline it creates.
Love and Rockets is coming back in comic book format.
Right.
People like to say pamphlet. I hate that word.
Yeah.
But comic book format, which is where it started. Many graphic novels. You step away, you come back, and all that kind of stuff. Why is it important to come back as a comic book right now?
Well, it started out as a magazine for 50 issues, and we wanted to take a break to have our own little comics, comic-sized comics.
Right.
And we did a few of those, and then they just basically asked us at Fantagraphics, people really miss Love and Rockets. So would you like to do it again? I go, well, if we change the format, I don't want to go back to the same thing. I don't want to, So we just decided to do it as a comic book. And so we did that for a few years, and then the market was changing with the graphic novels and collections, and bookstores seemed more appealing than only comic stores, because you could do both with graphic novels, comic stores and bookstores. So we thought about it for a while, but the trouble is you got to put out a lot of pages. So for several years, Jaime and I put out a 100-page book, which is 50 pages each. And that was fun at first because you could really spread out. You could really do long stories. You could really do 2 issues of one of those books and then collect it. You had a book. But then it started to get tiresome. It really did. And we missed comic books. We grew up with comic books. I liked the fact that you go every several weeks to the comic store and get the new issue of whatever it is you like,
Yeah.
And indie comics are a little slower, of course, but the idea that Love and Rockets will come out as a comic book again, and more often, different covers, you get to see the cover. Oh, that's the new issue of Love and Rockets. That's fun for us. And Jaime prefers it. He prefers to do that kind of have it shorter bursts of energy, coming out often. And I have to agree with him right now. I got a little bored with the long book, and it was just a little too labor intensive. It was more about finishing it than enjoying it.
Right.
So now we're going to give that a try for a while. And see
Interesting. I want to finish with something I read online about you, that you found confidence in the punk rock scene growing up. That is what gave you confidence to become an artist and make comics. Talk a little bit about that, because I've heard that from so many. Talk about the importance of the punk rock scene to you in your life and it made you maybe who you are today.
Well, I always liked comics, and growing up in the '60s, our timing was good because it was the fertile time of the Marvel age began when we were kids. So we were getting our early issues of Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, those comics. We still loved DC comics. We liked Archie comics, and Archie comics, since rock and roll had come into its own in the early '60s, and especially with the British invasion, that the comics had to be hip. And Archie comics, luckily, since they're targeted to young teenage girls, they had to be hip with the music and fashion. So we learned a lot from actually reading Archie comics about music and the fashion that the girls wear are for real clothes. Where Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko are still drawing in the 1950s, especially Steve Ditko. It was like, Spider-Man's great, but they're wearing baggy trousers from the 40s,
Yeah.
But I love those comics. So there was that energy of this new era of comics. But we didn't know because we were little kids. So they were just the new comics, we didn't know. So that was there, but music was part of it. The radio was always on. That was the heyday of AM radio, where you didn't have to change the station. Bang, Beach Boys.
And SoCal AM radio was something special.
Yeah,
too.
We would listen to KRLA, and it was like, okay, you get the Beach Boys, and then there's the Beatles song, then there's the Kinks, then there's the Stones, then there's the Shangri-Las, and then there's just da-da-da-da, and it's all good. And once in a while you get a clunker like Pat Boone or something, but then you'd get 10 more cool songs. That was the norm. We didn't think that was going to be legendary or So that was part of it. So reading comics and enjoying that. And of course, monster movies. I love monster movies.
Yeah.
Black and white. Show me anything from the 1950s in black and white, and I'm there. Everybody's scratching their heads like, that's terrible. Why are you watching that movie? I go, because I feel like I'm 6 years old again.
That's awesome.
And I believe that idiotic makeup is scary.
Right, right. You're doing a little time travel.
Yeah, but there's something innocent about it to the viewer. I didn't realize there was by cynical old men who are just trying to get these things cheap in the drive-ins. I didn't know that. I thought they're trying to scare me.
Right, right.
So anyway, so all that came together, and and growing up, and then so. And I listened to, and I was always a little bit of an outsider with music. I like mainstream rock, I always did. But when the early, the glam days came out, when you had Bowie and Alice Cooper and T-Rex and Slade and all these different kind of bands, they were different from the regular rock bands. So I kind of gravitated toward them just because I like the attitude, the snarky attitude about it. Well, that evolved into punk more or less. I mean, punk was more aggressive, of course, but. Right. Basically, you listen to the first Ramones album which is actually 40 years old this year. It has all the influences from all the music I listened to. There's T-Rex, there's Bowie, there's all this stuff in there, but they just revved it up, made this fast Ronettes type rock, and so it began there, and then Sex Pistols and all that stuff, and it started evolved. So we were at the right age. I was 20-ish. Haim was in late teens. So we'd already been drawing our comics for ourselves, and. That music came, and it was an FU attitude. It was just like all the Eagles fans and the Journey fans from the past were saying, oh, you listen to terrible music. We could just say F you. We got our scene, we got our music. And somehow we had comics to do, and somehow that was just like, well, we don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
We just didn't want to repeat what was already done, like Spider-Man or something, because that requires discipline and listening to authority to get it right, because Spider-Man was a licensed character. So we just didn't really want to do that. Even though we liked it, we were more, F that, let's just do our own stuff.
Yeah.
And I was just doing goofy science fiction, and Jaime just went right away with his punk girls and scene. And that got such an immediate response because it really wasn't out there in comics. It is there now, but there really wasn't too much of that, if at all, back then. So that's what did it. We were just energized and snotty, and we didn't care what people thought about our comics.
I can't believe a Journey fan would make fun of you because I can't stand Journey. When I hear "Don't Stop Believing" on and everybody starts singing it, I want to leave the damn room. That's obnoxious. You picked the right music.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, like I said, I still go back and
sure.
I secretly listen to I don't know what Yes records or something like that. But I know that music really spoke to me more.
That's awesome.
And that's kind of. But see, the thing is, Jaime went directly with the punk girls in the punk scene. I didn't want to go there since the audience for Love and Rockets was already there for Jaime's work. I was actually free to do Palomar. So instead of doing I can do whatever I want, just do a bunch of stupid stuff, I thought, no, I could do whatever I want and be serious, and be myself, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where a lot of punk came from. Just be yourself. Just be yourself. And so that's what I'm talking about by timing. I was in the right frame of mind.
Yeah.
And I had a place to present comics that way. So it worked out.
I could talk to you for hours, but we got to cut this short. But thank you very much for coming out.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Thanks. Hello, TV land.
Internet.
Internet. I know. I'm old. Internet. What's that? My phone. Look, I got a flip phone.
Do you have a flip phone?
Yeah. Oops, I'm not supposed to get up fast.
No, that's okay.
Oh, you can edit this.
You really do have an old. Oh my gosh.
Kirk Enterprise. It's just like this is actually why I have it.
You know what's nice about having that? Less distractions. Yeah, you could text on it.
Big numbers.
Yeah,
that's
big
what
number. Yeah, there's that too. Nice to meet you. Thank you very much for coming out.
Sure. Thanks a lot.
I'm Jonah Weiland, and this is CBR TV.